Hello, welcome to my Viewshare digital library of flyers from the Rochester, New York hardcore punk movement 1986 to 1990. This digital library is comprised of 20 digital objects of crowdsourced material that were assembled on an Excel spreadsheet using metadata modeled using Simple Dublin Core and the CDWA metadata standards that were then augmented on Viewshare to leverage that metadata into 5 views and 5 widgets. The first widget that opens the collection is the text widget, which is used to create a collection overview, which places this collection in a historical and social context, describes the assembly of this library, and also provides a little bit about the goals and aspirations for this library. The first view that I used for this collection was the gallery view. Since a user might not be familiar with these bands or these artists or this movement, I thought it best to open the collection appealing to the visual senses and just limiting the metadata here to the title and to the image so that a user could just browse the collection as works of art and allow the other views to contain more metadata details as a user progresses through the collection. So this collection can be browsed. Each of these images can be enlarged to further appreciate the flyers. So before I get into the further views here, I want to say a bit about the other widgets here. The widgets are really used to leverage the metadata in different ways to help the user discover aspects to the collection, to help them sort it in different manageable ways. This presented a challenge to me in assembling the spreadsheet, especially in terms of different fields that had multiple values. For example, a flyer that had 4 or 5 bands on it. How to present that information in a spreadsheet so that Viewshare could parse it out into individual bands so that I could capture bands appearing in multiple shows across these years. The way to do that was eventually to separate each band, each multiple value that is, by commas, and then augmenting that field in Viewshare. And that really opened up doors in different ways to leverage that metadata to aid the user. So let's see how exactly that works here in Gallery View. The band widget here is a tag cloud, and we could use that to narrow down this collection. We see Hunger Artists. There are 13 flyers. We can sort flyers by creator. I was a participant in this scene and was one of the artists who created flyers. We can narrow that down to 4 flyers. Now, borrowing from the CDWA metadata standard, which is used for works of art, materials, and techniques, became another way to help a user sort this collection. And one way of doing so was by how the flyers were made. So which of these 4 flyers utilizes original artwork? We have the Forgotten Rebels Hunger Artist flyer here. And this is as opposed to ones that use collage, that is exclusively clip art, sort of the instant art of the movement. Now, these widgets may be used across all of these views to sort these flyers in just that way. Next, let's take a look at the list view, which arranges the 20 flyers chronologically, has more detail to each of the entries here. Here we really kind of get to look at the bones of the collection here in terms of metadata. You notice that the description for each of these flyers is a few sentences of text which explain the show, describe some of the bands, the venues, and across the course of the collection really tell us a larger story of the collection itself and what went on in these years in this music scene. Again, this collection can be sorted using the widgets. To help a user discover aspects of the collection in different ways, in different contexts. Let's move on to the map view. Now, this was an important and powerful tool here because this was a localized music scene pre-internet, and these flyers were rarely seen outside of upstate New York, and the bands didn't have a terribly far reach. So most of these flyers represent shows taking place within a very limited geographical range. But this map view allows us to place these shows specifically in space by pinning each of the venues on a map here. And the user can close in and get a very street level view of where these shows took place, which is interesting because most of these buildings and venues no longer exist. So this is another aspect of how a metadata element can be leveraged to unlock new and different things about the collection. Once again, we can narrow down here and we see that Nuns on Death Row, we have 3 flyers for them at 3 different venues. Clicking on the pin brings up some of the metadata elements from our list view, but in a more abbreviated form, so that the map can be used also to call up some information about the flyer. Now, in addition to space, the timeline view allows us to place these shows in a timeline, so not only in space but in time. And they are placed in a timeline chronologically. The earliest show in 1986, the last show in our collection in 1990, then slide from month to month and year to year. Once again, the collection can be sorted using these widgets. In a similar fashion to the map view. Now, finally, wanted to take a quick look at the pie chart, which utilizes a different aspect of metadata. I thought it would be interesting to allow a user to view this collection by source, that is, who supplied this flyer to the collection, which collector owned this object that we then have a digital representation of. And as the collection grows, a user might want to explore it by collector. And this is sort of an interesting way of looking at the collection. We can again narrow down. We have Hunger Artist flyers coming from multiple sources. Let's look at how many Hunger Artist flyers that were drawn by Duncan Crawford. We have 3 sources for them. We have Spothra, Gerald Arian, and Jennifer Malone supplying 2 flyers here. Finally, let's return to our gallery view here. The search feature is a powerful one and searches any keyword across the collection, including descriptions. Since I wrote the descriptions, I know that one of the shows featured Nirvana and Foo Fighters musician Dave Grohl, whose old band Scream played in Rochester during this time period. That's it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my Viewshare digital library of flyers from the Rochester, New York hardcore punk movement.